Samantha sat across from Natalie in their usual corner booth at the cozy cafe, absent-mindedly stirring her coffee. A faint smile lingered on her lips from Natalie's latest story, but her gaze seemed distant. Natalie noticed immediately, leaning in slightly, sensing her friend needed to share something. "All right, spill it. What's going on with you and Ethan?" Natalie asked, giving her a knowing look. Samantha sighed and set her spoon down, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "You know, everything is fine. He's a great husband. We've been married for, what, almost 7 years now." She paused for a moment before continuing, her tone thoughtful. "But sometimes I wonder if there should be more, you know?" Natalie raised an eyebrow. "More? What do you mean?" She had heard similar sentiments from other friends before. "Like excitement. Passion," Samantha admitted, nodding slightly. "It feels like we're just coasting. Ethan believes everything is perfect, but I feel like something is missing, something that makes life feel thrilling again." Natalie's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Well, you know, I've been trying something new myself." She lowered her voice, leaning in conspiratorially. "Have you ever thought about opening things up a bit? Giving yourself some space to explore other people?" Samantha's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you serious?" "Completely," Natalie affirmed with enthusiasm. "My husband and I discussed it, and honestly, it's helped us. It's not about replacing what we have, it's about allowing ourselves a little freedom to breathe. And surprisingly, it's made us even closer." Samantha considered her words, a mix of nervous excitement and doubt flickering in her expression. "But how do you even bring that up? Ethan would never expect something like this from me. He'd probably think I've lost my mind." Natalie's voice softened. "Just be honest with him. Tell him how you feel. This isn't about him. It's about you and your needs. And who knows? He might be more open than you think. A little change could be exactly what your marriage needs." Samantha took a deep breath, glancing out the window. She had no idea that this single conversation, this one decision to open a door, was about to transform her marriage and her life forever. She leaned in closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "So, how do you even start a conversation like this?" A mixture of excitement and uncertainty shone in her eyes. Natalie smiled reassuringly. "Honestly, just be direct. Men appreciate it more than we realize. If you hesitate too much, he might get confused or even suspicious." Samantha frowned slightly. "But what if he takes it the wrong way? What if he thinks I don't love him anymore?" Natalie shook her head. "That's not what this is about. You're not rejecting him, you're sharing your feelings. Just be real with him. Let him know how much you love and appreciate him, but also that you need to rediscover something within yourself. If you explain it in the right way, he'll understand that this is about your growth, not about him lacking something." Samantha exhaled slowly, nodding. "So I tell him that I want to feel more free, more alive. And maybe he'll see that it's not just about us." She bit her lip. "But you know Ethan. He's not the type to embrace unconventional ideas. He values stability above everything." Natalie gave her hand a reassuring pat. "If he truly loves you, Samantha, he'll listen. And if he's supportive, that tells you everything. It means he's willing to work with you, even if it's outside his comfort zone. Just trust yourself and trust him." The following evening, Samantha sat across from Ethan at their dining table, her heart pounding as she rehearsed her words in her head. Finally, she took a deep breath and spoke. "Ethan, there's something I've been thinking about," she began, her voice steady but soft. He looked up from his plate, giving her his full attention. "What is it?" She hesitated, then continued, carefully choosing her words. "Lately, I've been feeling a little restless. Not because of you, but because of me. I feel like I need to experience more in life, you know?" Ethan listened quietly, his expression thoughtful, but he didn't interrupt. "I guess what I'm saying is, I've been wondering what it would be like if we, I don't know, allowed each other a little more freedom in our marriage. Just to explore, to see what it's like." She studied his face, searching for any sign of understanding. "It's not that I don't love you, Ethan. I do. But I feel like we could both benefit from a little space, just to breathe." Silence stretched between them for a long moment. Ethan's face remained unreadable as he absorbed her words. Finally, he nodded slowly, his gaze steady. "So, you're saying you want to open things up?" His voice was calm, measured. Samantha swallowed hard and nodded. "Just for a little while. Just to see. I really think it could be good for us." Ethan held her gaze, his expression unwavering. I see, he said finally, his voice soft yet firm. Well, if that's what you feel you need, Samantha, then I won't stand in your way. A wave of relief washed over her, but alongside it came a flicker of unease. His reaction was so composed, so controlled. She had expected surprise, maybe even resistance. Instead, he had calmly agreed, without a trace of anger. Ethan leaned back in his chair, folding his arms as his gaze settled on her. So, this freedom, he said deliberately, his tone carrying a subtle edge that Samantha couldn't quite decipher. I assume this would be mutual? Something that applies to both of us. Samantha hesitated. She hadn't given much thought to Ethan's perspective. She had simply assumed he would be content allowing her the space to explore. But now, watching him, a flicker of uncertainty tightened in her chest. Well, yes, I suppose, if that's what you want to. Ethan gave a slow nod, his expression unreadable. I appreciate that, Samantha. And I believe I understand what you're asking for. He exhaled, then met her eyes directly. I'm fine with it. More than anything, I want you to be happy. Samantha forced a smile, trying to push away the uneasy feeling creeping into her mind. She had expected resistance, maybe even an argument. But instead, Ethan had accepted her request with unsettling composure. And something about his calm response made her feel as if he intended to take this agreement seriously, perhaps even in ways she hadn't foreseen. Thank you, Ethan, she murmured, her voice softer now. That really means a lot. He returned a small smile, but there was something in his eyes that made her stomach twist. She couldn't explain why, but an unsettling thought took root. Had she lost control of this plan? Had Ethan's quiet acceptance masked something she wasn't prepared for? A few days later, Samantha and Natalie stepped into a vibrant downtown nightclub, the air buzzing with pulsing lights and the steady thump of bass-heavy music. The place was packed, alive with people dancing, laughing, and losing themselves in the electrifying atmosphere. Natalie grinned, giving Samantha a playful nudge. You finally made it. How does it feel? She called over the music. Samantha let out a small laugh, though her voice held a slight tremor. Honestly, I'm still wrapping my head around everything. I told Ethan and... She hesitated. He agreed. No arguments, no anger. He was just so calm. Natalie raised an eyebrow. Wow, sounds like he's pretty open-minded. See? I told you that being honest with him would work out. Samantha nodded, trying to convince herself of the same. Yeah, he did understand. It just felt strange. I almost expected him to resist. But instead, he just accepted it. He even said he wanted me to be happy. She paused, a frown flickering across her face. But something about it felt a little too easy. Natalie chuckled, brushing off Samantha's concern. Probably because he's excited about it too. Guys act cool, but trust me, he's already considering his own possibilities. This could be good for both of you. Samantha pushed aside her lingering doubts and forced a smile. Taking a deep breath, she shifted the focus. So, what about you? Does your husband know you're out here with me tonight? For a brief moment, Natalie hesitated. Then, with a quick shrug, she waved a dismissive hand. Oh, he's off on a hiking trip with his friends. We have an understanding, remember? No questions, just trust. Samantha narrowed her eyes slightly, curiosity piqued. So he doesn't ask where you go or who you're with? Natalie laughed lightly, slipping her hand into Samantha's as they wove through the crowd toward the bar. Come on, Samantha. Honesty is important, sure, but that doesn't mean every little detail needs to be shared. It's about freedom, remember? A flicker of doubt stirred in Samantha's mind. She had assumed transparency was part of the arrangement Natalie had described, but her friend's breezy confidence made it hard to question. Before she could dwell on it, Natalie ordered their drinks and raised her glass in a toast. To freedom and new adventures. Samantha clinked her glass against Natalie's, taking a deep sip. The cocktail was both sweet and strong, and before long, the tension in her chest eased, leaving her feeling lighter, almost carefree. They made their way onto the dance floor, laughter bubbling between them as they lost themselves in the rhythm of the music. The energy of the crowd wrapped around them, and for the first time in a long while, Samantha felt free. After some time, a gentle tap on her shoulder made her turn. Standing before her was a familiar face, Julian, a colleague she had worked with for years. In the office, he had always seemed professional, composed. But here, under the flashing lights, with a mischievous glint in his eyes, he looked different, charming, even a little intriguing. Samantha, he greeted her with an easy smile. Didn't expect to see you here. Samantha returned the smile, a quiet thrill sparking inside her. I could say the same for you. Julian introduced his friend to Natalie, And soon, the four of them were engaged in lively conversation, laughter flowing effortlessly between them. Another round of drinks followed, and with each sip, the night became more exhilarating. As the hours passed, the group gradually drifted apart, each pair losing themselves in their own world. Samantha and Julian found themselves in a quieter corner, where the energy of the club softened, leaving only the hum of conversation and the occasional burst of laughter from nearby tables. Julian leaned in slightly, his voice low and warm. "This is different," he mused, studying her. "I've never seen this side of you before." A rush of excitement, equal parts nerves and curiosity, coursed through Samantha. She met his gaze, her voice softer now. "I guess I'm feeling different tonight." Their eyes met, and in that fleeting moment, the choice felt effortless, almost inevitable. Without hesitation, they slipped out of the club, their laughter mingling with the crisp night air as they walked side by side. Eventually, their steps led them to a modest, quiet motel on the outskirts of town. Neither wavered as they stepped inside. For Samantha, the night felt unlike anything she had ever experienced, a rush of excitement and a sense of freedom she had long been craving. But when morning arrived and golden sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, the euphoria from the night before began to shift. A blend of satisfaction and an odd sense of unease settled over her. Dressing quietly, she stole a glance at Julian, still lost in sleep. She had sought adventure, and she had found it. Yet, as she stepped out of the motel and into the morning light, her thoughts drifted to Ethan, and that composed, unreadable expression he always wore. Before you discover what unfolds next, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That morning, Samantha carefully eased open the front door, stepping inside with deliberate quietness. The house was silent, unusually still. A small frown tugged at her lips as she looked around. Ethan was usually up by now. At the very least, he'd be having his morning coffee before heading out. A faint wave of unease crept up her spine. She moved through the house, checking the bedroom, the kitchen, even the backyard, but there was no sign of him. Her pulse quickened slightly as she pulled out her phone and dialed his number. After a few rings, he picked up, his voice steady and composed. "Hey, Samantha," he answered, his tone brisk. "What's up?" Relief flooded through her just at the sound of his voice. "Ethan, where are you?" she asked. "I'm at the office," he replied. "There's a new project that's going to require a lot of time, at least for the next few weeks. Might even be stuck working this weekend." Samantha exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing, though a pang of guilt flickered inside her. "Oh, I see. I just didn't expect you to be gone so early, and I was wondering." "Everything's fine," Ethan reassured her. "Just busy. I'll be home by dinner." She let out a small breath. "Okay. Just don't overwork yourself, all right?" That evening, as the sun dipped low and cast a golden glow through the windows, Samantha heard the familiar sound of the front door opening. Ethan stepped inside, setting his briefcase down near the entrance. "Tough day?" she asked, offering him a warm smile. He returned it, though tiredly. "Yeah, you could say that." He moved into the kitchen, filling a glass of water as Samantha observed him carefully. She wasn't quite sure how to begin, but she wanted to gauge his thoughts, to understand where he stood. Choosing a gentle approach, she decided to ease into the conversation. "So, how are you feeling about everything?" she asked casually. Ethan glanced at her over the rim of his glass, raising an eyebrow. "Everything?" he echoed. She gave him a small, almost sheepish smile. "You know, the open marriage thing. Have you? I mean, do you feel like you're getting anything out of it?" He set his glass down, considering her words. "Honestly, Samantha, I haven't really had the time to think about it," he admitted. "This project has taken up every spare second. Maybe once things slow down, I'll be able to focus on that part of my life more." Samantha nodded, forcing a smile despite the flicker of disappointment she felt. "Yeah, that makes sense." Ethan gave a small shrug before shifting his attention back to her. "But enough about me," he said, his gaze steady. "How about you? You and Natalie went out, didn't you?" Samantha's heart skipped a beat. For a brief moment, she considered telling him the full truth about Julian, but something inside her urged caution. Instead, she kept her response vague. "Yeah," she said, keeping her tone light. "We just had a few drinks, danced a little, and I ended up crashing at her place. Nothing too crazy." Ethan studied her, his expression unreadable. "And? How do you feel about it all? I mean, is this really what you wanted?" She hesitated, but before she could stop herself, the words slipped out. "Actually, yeah, I feel good. I know it's still new, but it's like I have this energy, this excitement I haven't felt in a long time." Ethan's eyes flickered with something she couldn't quite decipher. Then, with a slow nod, he offered her a small, calm smile. "I'm happy for you, Samantha," he said softly. His response should have reassured her, but instead, it left her feeling unexpectedly unsettled. She had expected something more, a reaction, maybe even a little resistance. But Ethan remained composed, as if nothing about this bothered him. Throughout the following week, Samantha found herself constantly messaging both Julian and Natalie. Julian was charming, playful, and unfiltered in his enthusiasm over their last night together. He hinted at something special he had planned for the weekend, something he described as a grown-up party, promising it would be a night she wouldn't forget. He even insisted she bring Natalie along. Intrigued, Samantha agreed, but knew she needed to talk to Natalie first. Picking up her phone, she dialed her friend's number. Samantha had been feeling a nervous excitement all week, but going over the weekend's plans with Natalie seemed like the best way to calm herself. The moment she dialed, Natalie picked up on the first ring. "Hey, Samantha. Getting everything ready for tomorrow." Samantha let out a small laugh, though a hint of uncertainty lingered in her voice. "Sort of. Actually, I wanted to ask you about something. Julian's been hyping up this party, and the way he described it, it sounded different." Natalie chuckled. "Oh, it'll definitely be different. Julian's parties are always unforgettable." Samantha hesitated before adding, "There's also Ethan. Lately, he's been so buried in work, barely saying anything. I honestly can't tell if he's okay with this or if he's just too preoccupied to care." Natalie laughed lightly. "Oh, Samantha, trust me, Ethan is probably just using work as a convenient excuse. Men hate admitting when they've got their own plans. He's likely doing his own thing while you're out." A small wave of jealousy passed over Samantha, but she quickly pushed the thought away. "Maybe you're right. I just wish he'd at least react to it somehow." "Listen," Natalie said confidently, "you need to stop worrying about Ethan's work for one night. Just focus on having fun. Julian's party is going to be exactly what you need." Samantha's curiosity grew. "All right, I'll try, but when you say fun, what exactly do you mean?" Natalie's voice carried a playful edge. "Let's just say you might learn some new terms by the end of the night." Samantha raised an eyebrow. "New terms?" "Yeah, like Milk Brothers or the Captain's Wheel." Blinking, Samantha felt both intrigued and slightly embarrassed. "The Captain's Wheel? What is that?" Natalie laughed knowingly. "Oh, you'll see. Let's just say it involves a little extra company. Just be ready for an unforgettable night." As Samantha ended the call, excitement replaced any lingering nerves. This was exactly the kind of adventure she had been craving. When Saturday arrived, Samantha told Ethan she'd be spending the evening with Natalie, keeping the explanation casual, a simple girls' night out. Ethan, still immersed in his paperwork, barely looked up as he offered a distracted smile. "Have fun, Samantha. Don't worry about me. I'll be here all night with this project." A mix of relief and satisfaction settled in her chest. "All right, just don't overwork yourself, okay?" Ethan gave a small nod. "Enjoy yourself," he said in an even tone, his focus still on his work. As she stepped out the door, a thrill of anticipation bubbled up inside her. She was about to embrace something new and exhilarating. Ethan's calm, detached reaction almost felt like permission, as if everything was falling into place. Later that evening, Samantha and Natalie arrived at Julian's house. The night stretched before them, full of untapped possibilities. Julian's home was even more impressive than she expected. Soft music floated through the air as they walked up the pathway, and warm light spilled from the backyard, reflecting off the shimmering pool. Samantha hadn't realized just how different this party would be. A small crowd had already gathered, several men and a few women, none of whom she recognized. The moment Julian spotted them, he broke into a wide grin. "Samantha, glad you made it," he greeted, his eyes twinkling with amusement. He gave Natalie a friendly hug before leading them through the house toward the backyard. As they stepped onto the patio, Julian chuckled. "Just so you know, the pool is fair game tonight. Did you bring a swimsuit?" Samantha's eyes widened slightly. "I had no idea there would even be a pool." Julian laughed, a playful glint in his expression. "No worries. Underwear works just fine as a swimsuit. Or, you could go without. No judgments here." He shot her a teasing wink. A rush of heat flooded Samantha's cheeks, but Natalie was already caught up in the energy of the night. Without hesitation, she kicked off her shoes and flashed Samantha an encouraging smile. "Come on, it's going to be fun," Natalie said before slipping out of her dress, revealing her bra and underwear. With a gleeful splash, she dove straight into the water. Julian handed Samantha a drink, and she exhaled slowly, letting herself ease into the atmosphere. The night carried a carefree, youthful energy like the wild parties from her college days. Laughter filled the air, music pulsed from the speakers, and the drinks flowed freely. Everyone seemed effortlessly at ease, caught up in the moment. At first, Samantha felt a mix of excitement and hesitation. But as the night progressed, the playfulness turned into something more daring. Flirtatious glances were exchanged, laughter melted into whispered conversations, and soon, the energy shifted. Someone suggested a game with light-hearted dares, and the teasing quickly escalated. People began dancing with new partners, others dared each other to jump into the pool in nothing but their confidence, and before long, all the typical boundaries seemed to dissolve. It was impossible not to get caught up in the thrill. Samantha kept stealing glances at Natalie, who was clearly enjoying every second of the unfolding excitement. At one point, Julian leaned in close, his voice low as he wrapped an arm around Samantha's waist. "So, what do you think?" he murmured. "Ready for something new?" Samantha felt the warmth of his hand resting lightly on her back, his gaze filled with an unspoken invitation that suggested something far beyond her usual experiences. A shiver of anticipation coursed through her as she hesitated, her heartbeat quickening. The atmosphere of the evening was electric, drawing her in, tempting her with the thrill of the unknown. "I think so," she murmured, her voice carrying a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. As the gathering naturally divided into smaller groups, Samantha found herself surrounded by unfamiliar faces. Some were deep in conversation, others laughing, and a few openly flirting, their interactions hinting at the direction the night was heading. Her eyes drifted to Natalie, who was already fully immersed in the moment, a playful grin on her face. When Natalie noticed Samantha watching, she lifted her glass in a silent toast, as if to say, "Here we go." But as the night took a more intimate turn, Samantha's initial excitement wavered. A strange unease settled over her as she glanced around. The idea of exploring something new had seemed thrilling in theory, but in practice, it felt different, overwhelming. As multiple hands reached toward her, she realized that her quickened pulse wasn't from exhilaration, but discomfort. Taking a steadying breath, she took a step back, gathering the courage to voice her feelings. "Actually, I don't think I'm ready for this." "Not yet," she said softly, her tone kind but firm as she adjusted her clothing. A few disappointed murmurs rippled through the group, but most responded with understanding. Julian offered her a small, reassuring smile. "That's all right, Samantha," he said warmly. "It takes some time to get used to. Maybe next time." Natalie, however, wasn't so quick to let it go. "Come on, Samantha. You were having such a good time. Just relax, give it a chance." But Samantha shook her head, her discomfort now unmistakable. "I really can't, Natalie. I just need more time." Sensing her resolve, Julian placed a calming hand on Natalie's shoulder. "Let's not push. Samantha should take things at her own pace," he said, then shot Natalie a knowing smirk. "Besides, I think there are plenty of other people here who'd be more than happy to entertain." Natalie hesitated only a moment before laughing and shrugging. In no time, she was swept back into the group, fully embracing the uninhibited energy of the night. Samantha, however, felt out of place. From the doorway, she watched as Natalie and the others lost themselves in the moment, their laughter fading into something more intense, their movements turning rhythmic and instinctual. A growing discomfort settled in Samantha's chest, prompting her to slip away from the scene. She wandered into a quieter room, pouring herself a glass of wine. Sinking into a chair, she took slow sips, letting the muffled sounds of the party fade into the background. Her thoughts drifted to Ethan, his quiet, unreadable expression when she had told him she'd be spending the night with Natalie. He had always been supportive, never questioning her choices. But now, for the first time, she wondered if she had truly understood what he was feeling. Part of her wanted to leave, to escape the strange tension swirling in her mind. But instead, she stayed, lost in thought as she absent-mindedly traced the rim of her glass. Hours later, as the party wound down, people trickled out of the dimly lit rooms, gathering once more in the main area. Laughter and casual conversation filled the space as they helped themselves to snacks and another round of drinks. Natalie, still glowing with excitement, spotted Samantha sitting alone and sauntered over, nudging her playfully. "Hey," she said, a teasing lilt in her voice. "You okay? Looked like you were having a quiet moment back there." Samantha forced a small smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just not sure this kind of thing is for me." Natalie laughed, rolling her eyes. "Everyone just needs a little warm-up, that's all. Trust me, next time you'll feel right at home." But as dawn crept in, Washing the sky with soft hues of morning, Samantha's unease only deepened. As the last guests said their goodbyes, exchanging casual farewells as if it had been any other night, Samantha slipped away, leaving quietly. The lingering excitement of the evening had vanished, replaced by a nagging sense of dread that she couldn't shake. Driving home in silence, she felt a hollow weight in her chest. When she arrived, the house was dark and still. A quiet sigh of relief escaped her lips. Ethan must still be asleep. She moved carefully through the living room and climbed the stairs, her steps light. But as she opened the bedroom door, her breath caught. The bed was untouched. A sinking feeling coiled in her stomach. Glancing around, she quickly noticed that something was wrong. Some of Ethan's clothes were missing. The familiar comforter from his side of the bed gone. A knot of panic tightened in her chest. Then, her eyes landed on the nightstand. A set of papers lay there, stark against the wood. The bold, heavy letters on the top page spelled out a single, devastating word: divorce. A wave of shock slammed into her. With trembling hands, she picked up the papers, her mind struggling to process what was happening. This couldn't be real. But as her thoughts raced, Ethan's calmness over the past few weeks took on an entirely new meaning. It had all been leading to this, a quiet, deliberate move, gathering what he needed before slipping away from her life without a word. In a daze, she reached for her phone and dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. She tried again, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. No answer. In the following days, Samantha desperately tried to reach Ethan, calling incessantly, leaving messages, and even sending texts filled with pleas for him to talk. But it was as if he had vanished, leaving no trace except for the silence that filled the spaces where he used to be. Instead of hearing from him directly, she was met with a response from his lawyer. The messages were formal, distant, and devoid of emotion, making her feel even more isolated and uncertain. Then came an even harsher blow. At work, she noticed a shift in the way her colleagues treated her. The usual warmth and friendly exchanges had been replaced with cold, judgmental stares and whispered conversations behind her back. It didn't take long for her to understand why. Ethan had meticulously gathered proof of her involvement with Julian, text messages, photos, and even details from the night of the party. As the information spread, the reaction within her workplace was swift. The company's strict culture left little room for personal scandals, especially ones that blurred professional lines. Her supervisors soon called her into their office, their expression serious. With an air of finality, they informed her that her actions were under investigation. The very career she had dedicated herself to now hung by a thread, slipping from her grasp as the walls of her life seemed to close in. When the day of her court hearing arrived, Samantha was confronted with the full extent of Ethan's preparations. He had left no stone unturned. Among the evidence laid out before her were private messages, photos, and even surveillance reports from a private investigator he had hired. Every outing with Natalie, every flirtation with Julian, and even her arrival at the party had been tracked and documented in painstaking detail. Sitting there in stunned silence, she felt the weight of her mistakes pressing down on her. The realization that Ethan had been aware of everything while outwardly acting preoccupied with work was devastating. She had been blind to the quiet storm brewing around her, too caught up in her own excitement to see the consequences waiting on the other side. Now, she faced a harsh reality, one she had never anticipated. In the end, it wasn't his anger that had undone her but his patient, calculated acceptance. The divorce proceedings were nothing short of brutal. Every aspect of Samantha's actions was dissected and displayed in the courtroom. Her messages with Julian were analyzed, her outings with Natalie scrutinized, and every fragment of her so-called experiment laid bare for all to see. Privacy no longer existed. The fallout was swift and merciless. She lost her job almost immediately, and not long after, Julian was dismissed as well. The scandal spread like wildfire through their conservative workplace, leaving behind a lasting stain on both of their reputations. But the most devastating fallout didn't come from her career or the court, it came from Natalie. Ethan, ever composed and calculating, had quietly passed along all the evidence to Natalie's husband, Daniel. To Samantha's horror, she discovered that Natalie had never been truthful about her marriage. The open arrangement she had spoken of was a lie. Daniel had been completely unaware of her affairs. When he confronted Natalie, her world came crashing down. Without hesitation, he filed for divorce, and soon the scandal rippled through their social circles, turning close friends into harsh critics overnight. Humiliated and furious, Natalie cut all ties with Samantha, blaming both her and Ethan for her downfall. As the dust settled, Samantha found herself completely alone. Friends, neighbors, and even family members who had once stood by her now distanced themselves. People she had worked with for years took Ethan's side, seeing him as the dignified, betrayed husband, a contrast that only deepened the shadows around her. It seemed there wasn't a single person left who hadn't turned away. One evening, in a final attempt to salvage what remained, Samantha managed to reach Ethan. Sitting across from him, she felt the overwhelming weight of her choices pressing down on her. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at him, her voice trembling with regret. "Ethan, please. I made a mistake. A terrible one. I truly thought it would be something meaningful, something that might even bring us closer in a strange way. I was wrong. I only slept with Julian once, and at the party, I couldn't go through with it. It was all just a mistake. Please, can you forgive me?" Ethan let out a deep sigh, his gaze steady yet devoid of warmth. There was something in his expression, maybe exhaustion, maybe pity, or perhaps just relief that it was all finally over. "Samantha," he said, his tone calm but unwavering, "when a woman suggests an open marriage, it usually means the idea has already taken root in her mind. Long before anyone notices, the foundation of the relationship begins to crack. And you weren't honest with me. You wanted to keep things hidden, to live with one foot in that world and the other in ours." She lowered her head, hearing the finality in his words. "I wanted this to end cleanly," he continued, his voice steady. "Maybe I went too far. Maybe it seems harsh. But the fact that you felt the need to keep things from me told me everything I needed to know." He exhaled once more. "I don't think there's anything left to fix, Samantha. I really don't." As his words settled over her, the enormity of her choices crashed down with full force. The life she once had was gone, and there was no going back. She had believed this experiment would mark a fresh start, a chance to reignite the spark within her. Instead, it had only exposed the hidden fractures she had been unwilling, or perhaps unable, to acknowledge. As she walked away that night, an overwhelming emptiness settled over her, the weight of choices she once considered insignificant now shaping the course of her life. The lesson she had learned was harsh and unforgiving, carving itself into her soul with a permanence she couldn't ignore. All she could do was hold on to the hope that, someday, she might find a path to forgiveness, or at the very least, come to terms with herself. Whether redemption lay ahead was something only time, or perhaps some higher mercy, could decide. For now, she remained alone, left with nothing but the haunting echoes of her past missteps. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. Wishing you a wonderful day and the best of luck.